Oh, that big game is 2 days away, and we got one of the guys from one of those teams. My man Chris Clark sitting in. We're going to talk a little bit about Hurts versus Spags. Let's get to it here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open, and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen, and you can find us wherever you get your podcast, whether you listen to them, whether you watch them. Does not matter, wherever that location is, make sure you tap in each and every day. All right, it's Crossover Thursday around our network. There's only two teams doing crossovers, though. That's the Eagles and the Chiefs, but it is still presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play just $5. Shout out to the everydayers for joining us every single day. All right, so I usually have CC, Chris Carter, here on Thursdays. Now I got CC. I got Chris Clark, and he's going to sit in with us today and give us some of that AFC West Kansas City Chiefs knowledge. You're going to ask him about everything. We're going to ask him about officiating. We're going to ask him about all that stuff. But here's the rundown. We're going to end up talking about a 2025 outlook for the AFC as a whole, but mainly the AFC West. I want to really pick Chris's brain while I got him here. Myles Garrett, is he going to a team in the AFC West? We will discuss that. He is dominant. Myles Garrett done dominated the Super Bowl talk this week, and rightfully so. He's a great player. But we're going to start at the very top, Chris, talking about Hurts versus Spags. Part 2. The last time you saw Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl, he pretty much was the MVP, but they lost. And it was against the Kansas City Chiefs. Give me your thoughts right now, man. Are y'all a little bit concerned? You've seen this. I think the Eagles are a better team than they were then, and that was a very close game. I happen to not think the Chiefs are the same as they were then, though, but we'll have to see. You got to beat the champs, man. What you think about that?
You know, I like what you say, and I will say, and I said this on the crossover show, Jalen Hurts was a better quarterback that day. I don't think that there's any real question about that. He was the better player. But what it comes down to is when push comes to shove, Patrick Mahomes finds a way to get it done.
Finds a way, man.
That's all it really is. I mean, you could say that he didn't play the best game that day, and the Jalen Hurts outplayed him. That's fine. But at the end of the day, like I said, he finds a way to win. All that matters is you find a way to win, and he does it on a regular basis. So at this point, it's just something that you're used to.
Yeah, you're right, man. It is. It's going to be a good game. I really do believe. I don't think it's going to come down to him, but I do believe that one of the key. I think if there's a lopsided matchup here from a coaching perspective, I think it's Spags versus that young kid that's going to be the coach for the Saints. At least that's what Ross Jackson thinks, that Kellen Moore will be the coach of the Saints. I think, if anything, that's the biggest matchup where you go, all right, if there's a weakness, it's that guy against Spagnuolo, not Vic Fangio against Andy Reid or anything like that. Let me let you hear what Louis says about this game when it comes to Spagnuolo versus Jalen Hurts.
I'm thinking a lot about Jalen Hurts going up against Spags' pressure looks in Super Bowl 59. I'm really curious how this goes because Jalen Hurts, he's very up and down against pressure, against blitzing defenses. I mean, there's times like 2 weeks ago against Commanders where he's completely cooking a defense that sends blitzes his way. Against pressure, he's evading it, getting the ball out quickly, making them pay down the field. And there's other times where defenses are sending him different looks, all-out blitzes. They're coming from different areas of the field, and sometimes he gets more panicky, drops his eyes, tries to do too much with his legs, and holds on to the football, and that's where he can take some sacks. So I wonder which version of Hurts we'll get if Spags does dial up pressure. I will say if he does, it could actually benefit the Eagles because that's going to allow for some one-on-one opportunities for A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. If Jalen can get those balls off quickly, there could be a chance for explosive plays against Kansas City. So it could be a gift and a curse if that's what Spags does.
Any of that stuff scare you, Chris? I know you don't scare easily because your team is always winning, but does any of that stuff scare you just a smidget?
Go back and watch the Super Bowl, the last Super Bowl the Chiefs played the Eagles. Jalen Hurts played fantastic, and the Chiefs still found a way to win. So is it possible that he plays fantastic again and the Chiefs still find a way to win? Yeah, absolutely, in my mind. I will say I trust Spags. You go back, and I know we're talking about the Eagles game, but go back and watch the AFC Championship game, 4th and 5. That specific play, he just fooled Josh Allen, and Josh Allen is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. I don't think there's any question about that. And he's seen more than Jalen Hurts, and I think he's a smarter quarterback than Jalen Hurts. To me, Spags is going to have something in his bag that's going to surprise Hurts. I don't know what it's going to be. I can't give you an exact of this is what it's going to be, but he's going to have something up his sleeve that is going to surprise Jalen Hurts. And the question is can Jalen Hurts make it count when he absolutely has to, versus does Spags get a turnover some way by pushing pressure where Hurts isn't expecting it? Or, look at the Super Bowl again where they played. Hurts dropped the ball and Nick Bolton scored a touchdown on something that should have never happened.
It never happened, right? You're right. I can tell you one thing, too, watching the Super Bowl last year against the 49ers. That last play down there in the red zone, when they got the pressure they wanted and they forced a quick throw, and L'Jarius Sneed, I think it was L'Jarius Sneed, he had to jump it. And they do such a good job of situational football where every little thing and the timing that's required, they always get exactly what they want. People talk about the officials all the Okay, I'm going to talk about that official. Give me your honest opinion, dog. It's the barbershop, right? You can just go ahead and tell me. I know y'all have benefited from it, and I know it's easy to say, well, look, man, we're just great, and, they're opportunistic. Do you feel a little bit sometimes that the officials do give y'all a little bit too much love? You can tell me. I ain't going to tell nobody else.
I don't think so, but that's me. I look at the stats and go back and look at the stats. Kansas City is somewhere, I think, right in the middle, around 17th in penalty yards. They have multiple different situations where they've had penalties go against them and have cost them in big games. You go back. I know we're talking, current stuff, but go back and watch Mahomes' first AFC Championship game. Chris Jones hits Tom Brady in the face, or doesn't even hit him in the face and gets called for a personal foul, extends the drive. Brady goes on to win, and the Chiefs don't make it to the Super Bowl that year. That's just one example. Yeah, it's a little bit older, but that's a good example of a situation where in the crunch time it didn't happen. Officiating is what it is. And the funny thing that I think is the funniest about all of this at this point is Kansas City beat Buffalo in the 13-second game a couple seasons ago.
Right.
What happens the next year? They change the rules. And now you can't just win with just a touchdown.
Yep.
And now they're changing the rules. They're talking about changing the rules the second time and going to using a ball that is going to be able to electronically be figured out where it is. To me, I get it. I understand the thought process. The technology is there. I don't understand why they haven't done something sooner. But it seems like the league wants to continue to push things forward when it is not benefiting Kansas City, when other teams are bringing it up. And yet everybody's sitting here saying that the Chiefs are the ones that get all the advantages with the officials.
Yeah, you know what? You make a compelling point, man. I know what you do in your other job, but you also could have been a defense attorney because of the way you just laid that out there. But no, that was very well said. And I do have a little bit of a – it's not really going against what you said. I just think when you're really, really good too, and you press. Yeah. Good teams are always penalized, right? So you press, and what happens is people go, I can't call everything. So it sometimes there are things that aren't called because they're just that good that they're always pushing towards the edge of that line, and that's I think that's just a part of it.
And it's really hard because you go back and you watch film and you watch players and it looks like they're getting held, and you see screen grabs of somebody with an arm around somebody's neck. 9 times out of 10, they're doing a rip move, and that's not a hold. Mm-hmm. Like that is specifically stated that that's not a hold because they did a rip move, and that that's what happens when you do that. So I do think that officiating across the NFL is not what it should be. I will agree with that completely. And before we get to the next segment, I do want to say really quick, you bring up Jalen Hurts versus Spags, but Patrick Mahomes is 8-2 in his career versus number 1 scoring defenses.
That's a good point. And after an 0-3 start, I think Andy Reid has won 8 straight against Vic Fangio coordinated defenses. So there's a lot going into that game. A lot of talk this week wasn't even about this game. It was about a player, a great player, Myles Garrett. We're going to talk about that and kind of tie it in a little bit to what is going on in New Orleans. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you in part by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on all the action. With live betting all game, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, running it down here with CC, a different CC, my man Chris Clark from Locked On Chiefs. We're getting to it, man. Big game this weekend. Everybody knows about the Super Bowl, Eagles versus Chiefs. I ain't gonna tell Chris who I picked. When I made a pick the other day.
I already know.
Somebody told you already? Somebody told you.
I saw the squad show.
Yeah, I know it, man. Shout out to the squad show for putting my business all in the street. I'm glad you just decided to join me, even though I said what I said, man. But I gave a pretty good reason for it. All right, here's the thing. Usually you see a whole bunch of stuff get talked about at Super Bowl weekend, and you're like, what's going on? People are asking folks these weird questions. But a lot of talk was centered around one Myles Garrett, the guy that I believe they say the best defensive player in the league. I've actually said it. I got to give some love to Chris Jones, though. I'm sorry. I still, he's GOAT category, and he ain't fell off. So I got to say that I think it's one of those two, with all respect to TJ Watt. But when a player like that is thought about being moved, there's a lot of talk about it. And we were just talking about the squad show. Listen to the squad show with Locked On Browns. My man German has to say about that.
But the main story that's being talked about while we wait for the main story to arrive is Myles Garrett. Spencer German, let's start with you, host of Locked On Browns. I for one am a fan of your take, but let's what does this mean for Myles? What does this mean for the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, it's funny. I know a couple of you guys are down in New Orleans for the Super Bowl, but I felt like this was the closest the Browns fans have probably ever felt to like dominating Super Bowl week. Like, oh, the Browns are going to talk about the Super Bowl, but they've never actually come this close to actually playing in it. So it's really for all the wrong reasons. But yeah, I've kind of been in the camp of, as long as Myles Garrett wants to be part of this thing, I think you do sort of try to thread the needle on staying competitive, not ripping it down to the studs. But as soon as this trade request comes out and it's like, hey, I want out, I don't want to be part of this anymore, I think that kind of provides the clarity that you're looking for if you're the Browns, for like, you don't now have to operate in this limbo of, are we a team that's close to contending, or are we a team that needs to start all over? I think this kind of just tells you, rip off the Band-Aid and accumulate as many draft picks as possible and start worrying about the draft in 2025 and 2026 and getting this thing back on track as soon as you can.
All right, so Chris, one of the destinations that people keep talking about, well, two of them, Baltimore, you ain't got to worry about dealing with that until next year, and Philly. Y'all are lucky you ain't got to deal with that this weekend, especially with your tackles, the left tackle position being how it is. But what do you get with all of this? Do you understand Myles, who's been around for a long time and just looks at their quarterback situation and knows that they still got to pay a dude who isn't even healthy right now, and even when he was, he just wasn't very good. You kind of understand it. This doesn't happen to teams like Kansas City very often because that's a destination place, because they win a lot. How do you feel about Myles Garrett? I said that the other day. I got Myles Jack on my mind, man, because Myles Jack wasn't down. He kept the Jaguars from going to the Super Bowl. But how you feel about Myles Garrett?
I understand it. Like, I get it from his perspective. He wants to win. He wants a chance to play for a championship. And really quick, one of the things that I cover when I'm not doing Locked On Chiefs is talking about salary cap. And Myles Garrett, his cap number for next year is only $1.25 million. He has another bonus, so he could actually make close to about $5 million total. In 2026, he's got maybe $10 million total on his salary cap numbers. So for a guy like that, you could easily make a trade to just about any team in the NFL and make those numbers work. So I get it from his perspective. He wants to go win a Super Bowl. I know where you kind of want to go with this, but I just want to say, hey, Myles, Kansas City would love to have you.
Do y'all got the cap space? Gee, how many people y'all gonna get, man? Do y'all have the
$5 million? Yeah, for $5 million, they could easily make that work. Patrick Mahomes has a $60 million cap hit next year. There's no way he's going to be on that number. And Chris Jones has an insane cap hit too. They're going to move money around. I guarantee you they can make a deal work with Garrett if he's willing to play on that and play for a championship, because that's what he would be doing in Kansas City.
About that, do you feel that the Browns, in your opinion, have a little bit of a responsibility, considering what type of guy he's been, what kind of player he's been, what kind of guy he's been off the field? Do they have an obligation to kind of say, I know when Jalen Ramsey left Jacksonville said, we'll send you where you want to go. And they gave him 5 teams, and they tried to get the best deal out of those 5 teams. Do you think Cleveland has that obligation, not necessarily morally, but just from a, all right, guy, we got you, we're going to take care of you type deal? Or should they just say, I don't care, we'll send you to Carolina, we'll send you to Jacksonville, we'll send you to Las Vegas if they give us what we need to get?
I think they have an obligation. Garrett has always seemed to be a stand-up guy. Obviously, the one penalty against the Steelers that, that's way in the past. So really no real thoughts other than, he got past that. But he's always seemed to be a stand-up guy. He's always seemed to be good for Cleveland. He's always seemed to be a team-first guy. And obviously, this trade scenario is not going to be good for that team. But the reality is you laid it out. I mean, Deshaun Watson is $46 million against the cap next year. They can't do anything about it. It's guaranteed. Unless they're going to try to say that there is a reason to void his guarantees, they are stuck paying him. So Cleveland isn't going to be able to compete because Deshaun Watson isn't a QB that deserves probably to be paid $20 million a year, let alone 46. So, yeah, they're in a bad situation, and the only way around it is probably trading off one of your stars. The problem the Browns have is Garrett has a higher cap number for them because of their bonus proration. So that's going to be a little bit impactful.
Like 19 million or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be a little bit of so in 2025, his number's 19 million. In 2026, it's 20. But the bigger problem they have is he's got void years of $40 million in 2027. So they have some cap issues that they would have to deal with if they trade him. And I do think that that's going to play into things. The team that brings him in isn't going to hardly owe him anything. So to me, I think it's a no-brainer for anybody who can make the trade, and you could probably get a high pick for it because of the quality of player and because the price tag. But Garrett's got to be willing to he's got to be willing to play for the amount that he's getting paid, and maybe give him some extra incentives.
Now listen to this. There's somebody in your division that's lurking. They got their little fingers and they got their little beady eyes watching this situation. It's the Denver Broncos. Listen to my man Sayer and my man Cody talk about this situation.
Wouldn't it be nice to have a guy like Myles Garrett? 100%. Absolutely. The dude is legitimate. But here's the case, too. You don't need him. It's not something that the Broncos need. It's a luxury buy, right? It's like, you get paid a really, big bonus. You're like, I'm going to go buy a house with this bonus. You don't do that. That's not a smart financial decision to do. And look, I think also as well, I mean, Sarah, you mentioned the outside linebackers. I think in Denver's scheme with Vance Joseph, Myles Garrett would play defensive end more so than he would play on the outside edge here. And then when I look at that position, well, you already have Zach Allen. You already have John Franklin Myers. Both those guys are making money. You're looking to maybe potentially extend Zach Allen here in the near future. It just would not make sense, though it would make the Broncos defense really, really good, which it was last year. Look, the Broncos had 63 sacks last season, and adding Myles Garrett to the mix would certainly be a very dangerous dynamic.
Listen to me, man. Ain't nobody worried about positions. When you get a guy this good, you figure it out. Right? You better change your scheme then if you get Myles Garrett, because that's what Wade Phillips says. He says, you got a scheme that can't fit a good player in it, you running the wrong scheme.
The one thing I will say, I get what Cody's saying. They don't necessarily need him. But the reality is that Myles Garrett is better than anything they have. So, and I agree with you. I think he's probably, I don't know where I would rank him. I have to sit down and think about it. He's easily top 3 in the NFL. Is he number 1? There's an argument to be made in multiple different directions. But the reality is that he is one of the best defensive ends in the NFL. You don't have that. You're chasing Patrick Mahomes, and it is a cheap ad if you get him on the current salary. To me, it's a no-brainer for a team like the Broncos. Like
there should be 31 teams that want to talk to them. 32.
Absolutely.
Cleveland should try to talk him back into their fold and make him stay. So 32 teams should be talking to him. I'm going to talk about another team in your division while I got you here, the Chargers. We're going to get to that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Betterhelp. What do you want your 2025 story to be? Every January brings a new chapter, 365 blank pages waiting for you to fill. If there's a part of your life you want to rewrite or a plot twist you've been craving, why wait? Life isn't about fleeting resolutions. It's about taking control and becoming the author of your own story. Think of therapy as your personal editor, helping you craft the life you deserve. It's not just for crisis situations. Therapy can help you develop healthier coping strategies, improve your relationships, and empower you to be the best version of yourself. Whether you're facing a challenge or just looking for personal growth, therapy is a powerful tool to help guide you on your journey. Whether it's learning how to set boundaries or tackling stress in new ways, therapy can help you develop skills for a better tomorrow. Even if you've never tried therapy, the benefits are clear. Finding someone to talk to and gaining fresh perspectives can make all the difference in how you navigate life's ups and downs. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Running it down with my man, Chris Clark. We are talking Super Bowl. We are talking Myles Garrett, and we are talking AFC West while I have him here on this show, the Chargers. So I looked this up and I said, okay, you got Andy Reid, you got Sean Payton, you got Jim Harbaugh, and now you got Pete Carroll. The one coach in that hasn't won a Super Bowl is Jim Harbaugh, but I think he's Super Bowl winning material. He does have a college championship, and he probably maybe should have won one back in the day if the lights don't go off in New Orleans, ironically. Justin Herbert, I think sometimes he gets a little bit of a pass. He doesn't get beat up the same way Josh Allen gets beat up. He doesn't get beat up the same way that Lamar Jackson certainly. But Dan Henley, big U boy, talked to the Locked On Chargers crew about specifically Justin Herbert. His teammates love him, and I understand why. Check this out.
Man, I can say a whole bunch of more passionate words about him, because when I hear stuff like that, like dudes doubting Justin Herbert, it makes me get passionate, because I'm like, that's somebody I truly believe in. Like, we need him. And not to say anything about our backup quarterbacks, but when Justin goes down, bro, I'm on the sideline. I'm like, get up. Get up. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, get up, Justin. Like, that's so I don't even want to entertain people like that. That's you know what I'm saying? That's my little dissertation on the subject. But Justin is a guy. He is a guy. He's proven. Check the stat books.
I remember I was in the locker room, and believe it or not, Myles Jack was the dude that I was saying that the fans, I was doing radio at the time, and I was telling guys that Myles Jack, people, they were clamoring for him to play. And one of the former players said, well, whose place is he going to take? And I said, Paul Posluszny. You should have saw everyone who was within my ranks. They all looked at me and go, who? And all you heard was expletives. Like, that tells you, the team will tell you how they actually feel about a dude. And it's organic, man. It's not even, and what he just did was organic. It's not even about, well, that's my teammate, like T.O. with the crocodile tears. This is really like, no, dog, we absolutely trust him, and we don't want nobody else. How do you feel about Justin Herbert?
Easily a top 5 QB.
Now, you thought about it, didn't you? You said
I'm just thinking, like, over this past year, maybe not, but he has been a top 5 QB. He was last year, maybe not this year, but he has the ability to be that guy. I don't think that the Chargers did him right by giving him basically nobody to help at the wide receiver position. Don't get me wrong, McConkey can be good, but that's not enough, and Quentin Johnston isn't the answer there. So I do think that they're going to really need to invest in their wide receivers to help. But I do think that he is a very talented quarterback. And the one thing I will say, you brought up that Andy Reid and Pete Carroll and Sean Payton have all won a Super Bowl. The one that hasn't, Jim Harbaugh, has probably, but not even probably, has the second best quarterback in the AFC West in Justin Herbert. So to me, I think that if there's going to be a team that's going to give the Chiefs trouble, it's going to be the Chargers. Bo Nix looked great last year. I just don't know. It's going to be, can they build around Bo Nix? Can they build around him in that team? And the Raiders, until they get a QB, I'm sorry, Pete Carroll is Pete Carroll. He's a great coach, but QB is the biggest position in football. And right now, any team that is not Kansas City is chasing the best QB in the NFL with Patrick Mahomes. So good luck.
Yep.
If you don't have a good QB, it's going to be even harder.
And I think his year was a little bit underrated. He completed 66% of his passes, had 3,800 yards. He had only 23 touchdowns, but he only had 3 interceptions. They did not turn the ball over, and that's a big reason why they actually went into the playoffs and won. I believe they won a playoff game, or if they didn't win the playoff game, they competed really, really well in that game. So I think they got a bright future, and I think he gets a little bit. And I know Harbaugh didn't give him a receiver other than Ladd, but I tell you what, them drafting Alt and Ladd in rounds 1 and 2, they might have won rounds 1 and 2, in my opinion, when you put them together over all the teams in the National Football League last year. And I think they can always go and add players this year, whether it be in free agency or in the draft. They can go get a wide receiver this year. Real quick, Pittsburgh. It came out that Mike Tomlin approves all of the personnel decisions. So he's got another decision to make at quarterback. Russell Wilson got them into the playoffs. They had a little bit of a rejuvenated year, but it still seemed like him and Arthur Smith. I always thought that Arthur Smith getting that job in Pittsburgh after the job he did in Atlanta, or didn't do in Atlanta, was going to be something that holds him back. But I want you to hear about how Russ wasn't able to audible and change plays and whether or not it's a good fit moving forward. Here's Chris Carter and his guest on Locked On Steelers.
What's your sense of how this went down? We know that Justin Fields said during the season when he was he cannot change plays at the line of scrimmage. What do you think this relationship and this situation was like between Russell and Arthur?
It was weird because I think we said from last March when Russ signed that it was a weird fit, right? Russ does different things than Art likes to do offensively. Historically, Russ likes to, throw the deep ball, the moon ball down the sideline. Art likes to do play action and throw over the middle of the field. And these are just not, they weren't congruent things with each other. And so, I don't know, I expected some change to the offense. And I think we did see Arthur Smith try and fit some things to Russ. When you look at his Atlanta stats, man, I mean, Desmond Ridder and Mariota and Heineke never threw the ball down the middle, of the field, even though they tried, but they never threw the ball outside the numbers deep either. They never really threw those shots. So Art did make some changes, but I think it speaks, one, the reason why I think Russ was allowed was because he's just such a tenured vet, right? You just have that trust built in with the guy that's been in the league for 14 years now. I think Russ has been in here for. So there was that built-in trust. And then sometimes that just corrodes, right? Whether Russ made a bad play. Jerry said this happened after that first Cincinnati game, which is really interesting because we saw them completely flip the script on its head. The next time they played Cincinnati was a run-heavy script versus the pass-heavy script. And so it's interesting to see that because I do think the call change dynamics changed, but also, how much of that was George Pickens being out, how much of that were different things because they were missing a few guys as well.
So are we going to just keep pointing the fact that, guys were injured, he was injured, or are we going to use our eyes and realize that it appears right now they're only going to go so far with this offensive coordinator and this quarterback combination in Pittsburgh?
I think you have to admit that it's more of a combination thing than it is anything else. Russ Wilson played better than I ever expected he would last year for Pittsburgh. I didn't think he was going to be a guy that could get them to the playoffs because he didn't show that in Denver. He had a couple of good games, but he never really showed promise or something that you thought was going to be able to get them over the hump and get them back to the playoffs. But Tomlin's a fantastic coach. He's never had a losing season. So, I mean, he continues that trend going forward. I don't think it's a great fit combination-wise, but the problem that they have is they got him for almost nothing. And right now you're in a situation where if you're going to go out and get a quarterback, you're going to be paying $40, $45 million, $50 million a year, depending on who you're going to get.
40 for an average guy. Yeah.
Right. And you're talking in, the average one that's out there, Sam Darnold. How much is he going to get paid?
About 40. That's what Daniel Jones got last year. So that's the going rate.
And he shouldn't, but that's what he's going to get. Like, that's the problem is if you're going to go out and get a quarterback, you're going to have to pay close to $40 million a year to get a guy that you think can come in and start and actually make you competitive. Because the reality is that in Pittsburgh, if you don't get a quarterback that makes you competitive, you're punting on the year. You have a very talented defense you can't punt on, and you have a wide receiver. And I'll just be honest, you have a wide receiver in George Pickens who, if he has a quarterback that you feel like is below average, it is not going to be pretty in Pittsburgh, and it's going to be a big problem.
It is going to be a big problem, man. All right, so this game this weekend, man, I'm really, really looking forward to it. I think it's two very, very evenly matched teams. Good luck to you, Chris. Thank you for joining us here today. I know you guys will be super, super busy. And y'all make sure y'all go watch now on Monday. We'll look at, I don't know when are y'all recording? Sunday night, or you're going to wait till Monday? After
oh no, we'll be live right after the Super. We'll be live probably 45 minutes to an hour after the Super Bowl.
All right. So make sure you check out Locked On Chiefs wherever you get your podcast. Also, check out Locked On NFL twice a day, double dose. Tyler Rowland in the morning and slide through the barbershop where you are right now. Come on back in here and listen to us just get all up in people's business like we always do. For Chris Carter, who's not here, for Chris Clark, who is here. Chris is on vacation. I'm going to get tongue-tied saying Chris Carter and Chris Clark, but we're going to be gone, man. We'll see y'all tomorrow here when Matt Williamson joins us on Locked On NFL. Y'all take care.